Welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast, the podcast that helps aircraft owners and aviation businesses learn and understand the complex world of aviation insurance and risk management. From the basic principles of aviation insurance to risk management techniques and updates on the aviation insurance market, the Aviation Insurance Podcast is your guide to traverse the world of aviation insurance. Now, here's your host, Tim Bonnell.
Welcome to the Aviation Insurance Podcast, where we talk about the fundamentals of aviation insurance. In our most recent episode, we talked about some safety management systems, and that's a great episode to kind of prime you for where we're going with today's episode. So if you haven't listened to that, I'd encourage you to hit pause and go listen to that one. Come back and listen to this, but you can get enough out of this on its own. And we're going to talk about emergency response plans, right? The best way to respond to an emergency is being prepared in advance to do so. When the stakes are low, the stress is low, the situation is one where we can have calm and thoughtful planning so that if in the event something does happen, we can execute. So an emergency response plan is that advanced planning, thinking of all the contingencies that could happen within our business and how we are going to respond to restore our operations to where they were prior to that event. And obviously, this is an extremely large issue, but some of the things that will go into an emergency response plan is kind of an initial checklist of items outlining who would respond on certain areas of our plan, whether that be media, law enforcement, government officials like the NTSB, FAA, who's going to notify family in the event of some sort of disaster, the insurance company. Also, we need to think about continuity planning. If one of our key leaders becomes incapable of performing the role, what's that going to look like? So these are all questions that need to be evaluated and answered in advance with contingencies put in place so that the response to an emergency will be thought of in advance. In the event of something would happen, the team would be prepared to continue and hopefully restore operations to where they were or better than they had been, depending on the circumstances. But these things, obviously, when we're talking about aviation, we're talking about aircraft crashes, ground losses. It could be other things. It could be active shooters. An active shooter situation, a hazmat release, weather phenomenon like a tornado or a fire or a flood, medical emergencies. What are we going to do if there is a late aircraft, one that did not arrive at its destination? General accidents or incidents that might have a public reflection, natural disaster, and again, loss of key people. All of these things and more could have a profound impact on a business. And again, planning in advance, who's going to respond, who's going to be responsible for each area, what happens in the event of these few key contingencies. These all need to be addressed, outlined in a plan, and then there needs to be a practice of this plan based on practice scenarios. Typically in an aviation organization, that's done at least annually. Any time that there is a significant change or meaningful change that would necessitate a review, or any other time that is required. Right. So annually be a bare minimum. Anytime there are changes or anytime that there's a felt requirement to run through the ERP exercise, because if you have an ERP and you don't practice it, then you won't be as effective when an emergency actually happens. People will be scrambling just to find the document, only to find out it's out of date, and then the questions are up in the air, and so then it did not have as strong effect as we wanted to have. Again, this is one of those things that there are companies that this is what they do. There are, obviously, you can Google and find templates on do a search engine, find templates on the web for a basic level. And depending on the size of your company, maybe that's at least the minimum thing you can do. But there are companies that specialize in this, certainly those who specialize in the aviation industry, and they have partner organizations that play different roles in notifying and addressing some of these different areas. So again, you can find those online or through one of your associations. But planning and executing and reviewing the results of these exercises will help you determine how effective your ERP is And again, if there is an emergency, having an effective, up-to-date, well-rehearsed ERP will better ensure the success of your organization recovering from a large loss or a disaster of consequence. And keep in mind that when we talk about insurance, it's a lot of times about a dollar amount, but there's a lot of intangible losses, and one of that's the loss of reputation we want to avoid. I'm not going to get into specific subjects there, but just think about what would happen if your reputation's damaged, and how you respond to certain incidents can help make or break that. So if your organization does not have an emergency response plan, even if you're one aircraft, I'd encourage you to look into creating one. It's a great part of that follow-up of your safety and risk management program. It's thinking in advance what would happen beyond just contacting an insurance company in the event of an unfortunate loss. So that is all for this episode. Until next time, join us as we continue navigating the waypoints of aviation insurance and enjoy clear skies and unlimited visibility.
Thanks for listening to the Aviation Insurance Podcast. If you found this episode of value, please share it with someone who would benefit from this information. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss any new episodes, and to help our show have more impact. This episode is brought to you by Aeris Insurance Solutions, your flight plan for navigating the turbulence of aviation insurance. For more information, visit aerosinsurance.com. That is www.aerisinsurance.com. Disclaimer: these episodes are for educational purposes only, and due to the changing regulatory and legal nature of the business, some information may change over time. Having a well-educated and experienced aviation insurance broker on your team is an absolute requirement to success in business and for managing your aircraft and aviation business risks.